Good afternoon. This is Karen Goldner with the Women's Business Development Center in Chicago. Welcome to our Growth Wheel webinar called Finding More Hours in the Day by Delegating. Glad that you are on the call. A couple of housekeeping items first, and I will probably repeat this a few times as more folks join us. There are some handouts on the right-hand side of your screen in the webinar toolbar. It says Handouts 3. Those are Growth Wheel tools. There's 2 tools in an article, and you can download those at any time during the call. Because of our license agreement with Growth Wheel, we can't have those tools available just on our website, so you will need to download those, and the call will go about 45 minutes today. So that's one thing. The second thing is, if at any point you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and type them into the question space, and I will either answer them right away, or if it's something I'm going to cover further along, I will get to it when I get to it. And I promise you that I will respond to all of your questions before the end of the broadcast. So let's go ahead and get started. This is me. I'm the director of the Small Business Development Center here at the Women's Business Development Center. And I'd like to find out a little bit more about you. So if we could ask for poll 1 to please go ahead and come up. Just want to see where people are from. So if you can vote early and often, as we say in Chicago. Okay, we'll keep it up for just another minute or so. Okay, so it looks like we've got folks here from the Chicago area, so nice to speak with you today, and we'll talk a little bit more about how we may be able to work with you more closely at the end of the webinar. And then let's go ahead and have poll number 2 up, please. This is just how you heard about the webinar. We're a nonprofit organization, but we try to operate like a business, including doing effective marketing, so it's helpful for us to know how you found out about this program. So if you can go ahead and please let us know, whether from the website, whether you were here for an on-site workshop, or e-blast, or just from someone else. Thank you. It looks like the website is the source here, so thank you very much. We'll go ahead and close that poll. Okay. So what you're going to learn in this webinar: how you can identify ways to delegate successfully. This can be something that's such a frustrating topic for so many of us, and I include us, or I say us because I include me in that. Understanding what you cannot delegate. And then you'll be getting some Growth Wheel tools to help you in your business moving forward. So as I mentioned, we do want you to download these tools during the webinar. There's an article which is very good, and you can look at that later. And then the tools, Delegating and Job Description, are the 2 that we'll be focusing on today. Okay, let's go ahead and put up poll number 3, because I like to kind of know a little bit about our audience now. How long have you been in business? Either you're kind of at the planning stage, or you're been in business 1 to 3 years, you're more established. If you could please let me know, I would appreciate it. We have very shy people who aren't letting us know, so we'll keep the poll open for another few seconds. Maybe everybody's busy downloading. Okay, so we've got people who are planning but not yet generating revenue. That's great. Thank you. We can close that. And then go ahead and if you could bring up number 4, please, poll 4. If you have worked with us before, worked with another Small Business Development Center in Illinois, or worked with a Small Business Development Center outside the state, because the SBDC network is a national network of groups, and we many of the SBDCs use the Growth Wheel tool. All of us in Illinois do, and many other states as well. So it looks like we've got folks that have been working with us, and that's terrific. So we'll close that poll. Okay, now let's go ahead and move on to the program at hand. Growth Wheel, just to refresh your recollection of it, is a coaching tool that involves really all of the issues that companies throughout their life cycle need to worry about. You need a good business concept, you need a strong organization, you need to be able to operate profitably, and you need to have obviously lasting customer relations. And then within each of those quadrants, right, this is business concept, we have different focus areas. And as you might expect, the focus area for today's program is coming out of the tools and resources in the employees section. But you can see we've got, you know, all of these 20 focus areas. And we've done a lot of webinars on Growth Wheel over the last year, and we'll continue to do more, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. But all of the ones that have been done so far are archived on our website in the events calendar, and you can go to Online Business Resources and see the archived webinars. Okay, so let's talk about delegation. I thought it might be valuable, first of all, to talk about why we need to do this in the first place, right? And you know, we're going to be doing some workshops or some webinars next month on sales, and I don't think we really need to tell people why you need to sell, but sometimes we have to sell entrepreneurs on the whole concept of delegation. So you can't do it all if you want your company to grow, right? There's not enough time. You can only be in one place at a time, so there's not enough of you. And, you know, we just don't want to have anybody's brains exploding. There's just only so much that one individual can keep in her or his head at once. And the other thing that sometimes people don't think about if you do everything yourself is you won't get new ideas for your business. You're only going to be able to do as well as you can do. And one of the benefits of delegating can be that you get a broader way of looking at problems and at your business. And remember, your best employees you know, are not going to be just the automatons who do whatever you tell them to do. Your best employees are going to be the ones who want to contribute, right? And one of the ways that they can contribute is by making decisions and doing tasks that you've delegated to them. So we've been joined by a couple more people, and I want to welcome you to the webinar, but I also want to make sure that folks remember that during the webinar you'll want to download the handouts that are on your webinar. Go to webinar toolbar on probably it's on the right-hand side of your screen, and there's a little entry that says handouts, and there's 3 handouts there. There's 2 articles and I'm sorry, 1 article and 2 tools, and you'll need to download those during the webinar. After the webinar closes, they will not be available. So, delegating. Okay. So let me see if any of these statements sound familiar, if there are any of them that you have actually made. They can't do it as well as I can. Look at that. They screwed it up. I did it once and that was a mistake. I want that relationship to be with me. I don't want my employee to have the relationship with a key customer or a key supplier. And of course the famous, it's faster for me to just do it. So I'm going to take these one by one. So they can't do it as well as I can. That's right. They won't ever be able to if you don't let them. I don't know about you. I have never been particularly good at anything the first time I tried it. So if you want your folks to be able to develop and get better, you need to let them start. So then they messed it up the last time I tried. Well, this is something that we're going to be talking about in a little bit more detail in a few minutes, but you want to make sure you're asking the right person for the job, and you want to make sure that you are that you're delegating well, and we'll talk about that. If you have any questions, feel free to just go ahead and type them on the question bar, and then I'll see them and can respond to them. Okay, the issue of relationship. You know, you want to think about what your vision for business is, and if you want the business to grow beyond you, beyond a one-person type of business, you really want those relationships to be with the company. And so while you wouldn't want an important customer or supplier to only talk with one of your employees, if they talk with you and the employee from time to time, you end up actually strengthening that relationship because it's not just about you, it's about your company. And then lastly, you know, it's just faster for me to do it myself. Well, the first time. But this is a time investment, and we'll talk about the rewards you can reap as we go on. So if there's only one thing you remember from this entire time together, it's going to be the next slide. So what is the key to delegating? It is one simple word: context. You want to be able to provide context to your employee. And we'll talk about that a little bit more specifically, but when somebody taught me that a long time ago, that was so helpful and valuable in my being able to better manage the folks that I worked with. Okay, so how do we get started doing this? So first off, the basics. You need to understand your own processes. My colleague Meg Herman did a webinar on outsourcing about a month ago, which is on our archived webinars part of our website. And the first step in outsourcing is to understand and be able to document your own processes. You have to be able to know what it is yourself before you can have somebody else do it. Whether that's outsourcing, which would be to a, somebody else, a supplier of some type or a partner, or essentially insourcing, which is delegating, right? So this is kind of the second part of that decision process. And you need a clear job description, and that's going to be one of the tools that we'll look at very quickly here is a job description tool. But this is especially true for ongoing tasks. If you're hiring somebody who on a routine basis you are having them handle something, that really needs to be in the job description, because then when you're looking for that employee, you'll be able to find somebody with those skills in mind, right? If you don't really know what you're going to hire somebody to do, it's hard to make a good hiring decision. And of course, in an organization where people trust and respect and speak with each other, that's a much better way to delegate, right? If you're in an organization, or frankly, if you're leading this organization where people don't trust each other and where you don't trust your employee, you're not going to be able to effectively delegate, because they're going to figure that out, that you don't think that they're capable of doing whatever it is that you're asking them to do. Okay, so here's the first tool, and again, I'll remind you to download them from the handouts section of your GoToWebinar toolbar, but during the webinar, obviously. But here's the job description tool looks like. And a lot of it is what you'd think, right? The function and so forth, areas of responsibility. But this management and scope, I think, is really important to keep in mind. So if there are monthly, or it could be weekly, reports that you want the employee to make to you, one of the things we're going to talk about in a few minutes is kind of how you can identify metrics so that you can stay on top of things. I mean, if you're having an employee who's handling follow-up calls, or maybe even the initial calls with customers regarding payment, you're going to want to know on at least a monthly and maybe a weekly basis, how are those, are the calls being made, but even more important, is the money coming in, right? So that would be the kind of thing that you might put in here, some kind of weekly, just, it doesn't have to be some long report, just kind of a quick, send me an email every Friday and let me know, which customers either have paid or which customers haven't, depending on how you want to manage it. And then here's an important thing. The decision-making responsibility, right? So we're going to talk about this more in a few minutes, but just remember that this is important, that there may be and probably should be some decisions that you allow your employees to make. Then over here, the Growth Wheel is an international program, and so I just want to point out that there's a kind of a funny word over here, and they mean supervisor, right? They mean supervisor. So rather than management reference. Anyway, so that's just kind of what happens when the person who's writing it actually speaks Danish as their primary language. Okay. So what's the delegation process? So let's think this through step by step. You want to be precise. Vagueness is not your friend in delegating. So what is the task and what authority does the employee have? For instance, if you're having your employee call on billing, again, let's just say that, following up, do they have the authority when they're talking with the customer to make a payment arrangement? You know, maybe the customer says, well, I can't get it to you right now, but, you know, can I do something, you know, over 2 months or something like that? You know, you want to make sure that the employee understands what kind of authority they have. Who's in charge if there's a team? If you're asking more than one person to do something, make sure that you say, well, you know, Susan is going to be the lead on this. I worked for a boss at one point in a job years ago who didn't do that, and he would meet with lots of people individually, and we would each leave these meetings thinking we had all of this work to do, not knowing that other people had been tasked with the same thing, and it was incredibly frustrating and somewhat demoralizing and frankly an enormous waste of time. So if you're going to ask 2 or 3 people to do something, then make sure you know who's in charge. We have a question. Can we access the presentation later, or do we need to take notes? The presentation will be archived on our website later, but basically it would just be a matter of watching the whole thing again. And so you may want to take notes if there's a few items that, you know, in other words, you're not going to be able to download the presentation. So then back on how to be precise, what are your expected outcomes or goals? So your goal may simply be to keep these good relationships with these customers. That may be the most important thing to you. And so if it means that when the employee is calling to follow up on payment, that your primary goal, again, this is all about context, is essentially to be nice to the customer, right? To kind of give them, sure, if we need to take another, you know, 6 weeks to make the payment, we can live with that. We want to continue to sell to you. You're a valued customer. Or it may be, and this is probably more likely to be a specific issue rather than a more general one, but it may be that you just need to cut the customer off. You know, that these are people who have been historically very late. They're not that good a customer. You need to essentially fire them. And so your employee needs to know that as well. Again, that context, so that they know how to appropriately handle the situation. And then what is your specific time frame? Do you want this done every week? Do you need to have the outcome being the payment within a certain period of time? Or if this is more of a kind of an open-ended project, you know, you want someone to do a report on some research that they're doing on maybe a new market, when do you need that information by? And then how does this fit into the big picture of your company? Again, are you trying to, you know, well, what else are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to grow sales? Are you trying to get rid of an unprofitable customer? Are you looking at selling into this new market with your existing product? Or maybe you're thinking of a whole other product. Are you looking at a market that maybe doesn't make sense to the employee? Maybe right now you're just operating in Chicago and you want to find out about the Canadian market. Does that mean that you want to open a separate location in Canada, or are you going to plan to supply, from the Chicago market if that seems to work out? That kind of background is just super helpful for people to really understand what it is you're asking them to do, and they can do a better job. Then ask your employee, there we go. Ask your employee if they have any questions, okay? And allow your employee to provide suggestions. Again, this is how you can grow. They may have a different approach or suggestion. You don't have to take that suggestion, and a lot of times when an employee makes a suggestion, it's something that you can discuss with them and say, no, I think that we really do need to keep going in this direction. But at least you'll find out, and often their suggestions are going to be good ones. Okay, this is the next tool, the delegating tool. And again, you will need to have these tools downloaded from the handouts section before the end of the webinar. But this is something that you can do, a lot of it is self-explanatory, right? Highlighting specific tasks. If you can't articulate the task, then you're going to have trouble delegating it, right? So this makes you write it down in words. So are these in the product development area, maybe personnel issues, purchasing, selling, marketing, financial, production, administration or IT, maybe something about your facilities. And then how often per month do you think that this is going to happen? Or maybe it's even per week or per year. But just kind of to get a sense of how much work are you talking about. And then what sort of systems and documentation education, it says, basically preparation, will you need to be able to give to your employees in order to be able to do this effectively. And then over here, it lets you check whether you're going to be delegating this to a supplier, which is outsourcing. And again, if this looks like it's going to happen a fair amount, you might very well go back to our archived webinars on our website and look at Meg's outsourcing webinar from about a month ago, or to a person, right? Can you do it now, or do you want to do it later? And this later can be helpful because it can help you plan the education and training of particular employees. If you have somebody who, at some point you really want them to do your collections, and you might call this administration or you might call it part of sales, but you don't want them to do it now, or you don't think they're ready, but you want them to do it later. So indicate that, and then make notes to yourself about what are the things you need to train them how to do so that they can be ready to do that. Again, it takes time to do that, right? But it takes more time later if you don't. You simply will run out of time, and you are not going to be able to grow your business the way you want it to. And then the next steps are important here, to make a more detailed description of what you want to delegate so that you can more effectively communicate it to the employees. And remember, you will want to be thinking about how it fits into the big picture and the context that you're asking the person to operate within. Oops, wrong way, sorry. There we go. So this is kind of a lot, maybe. So let's think about how you can get started. Document the processes, right? I've said this a few times already. If you don't know what it is, if you don't know how you are currently calling clients to follow up on payment, you can't tell someone else to do it. You need to be able to document at least what you're doing now. Now, they may have some suggestions for improvement, but if you don't know that here's the list of people to call, or this is where the list is, and this is the person at the company I call, and this is what I generally say to them, and this is the process that they would have for payment. You can take the credit card, or you're following up with an email invoice, or however your company operates. You need to do that first. And then think about who you're working with. So this is kind of a response to that, well, I did it once and they screwed it up argument. So if somebody asked me to step into brain surgery and to do brain surgery, that would be a real mistake. It would end badly, as you might imagine. And, you know, not that it wouldn't be my fault, because I shouldn't accept to do it. And obviously this is an extreme example, but the person who told me to get in there and who gave me the scalpel would also have some responsibility for things going so badly. You really, you know, if you have an employee who's really good at, you know, making deliveries for you, but isn't necessarily so good on the phone, they may need some training before they're able to do collections over the phone for you. And it may be that they're never going to be able to do that. So you just need to think through what that person can do, what the person is capable of doing with some training, and then having that fit. And then as they get better at it, then you can increase responsibility. Maybe at first you want your employee to just be making the calls, and if the customer asks them about a payment plan, then you would say, well, bring that issue to me, and you know, tell them you'll call them back and bring that issue to me, and we can talk through it and decide whether and what kind of payment plan would be appropriate. And then after you've done that a couple times and the employee starts to get how you think in terms of the collection process, then, you know, let them start having that authority on their own. And, you know, it's always better, easier said than done, but always better to think ahead, right? So, you know, even if you don't want them to start doing the collections right now, sharing some of that work right now isn't a bad thing. At least having them be aware of where the list is, for instance, of the customers you call. Maybe they can sit in on a couple of calls or just hear how it goes, because it makes things easier for you when you need them to do it. And it may be that you need them to do it in a rush, and so that way they'll be better prepared. Okay, what is the authority gap? So these guys a long time ago, in 1986, eek, that was a long time ago, wrote an article about delegation. And they said that the authority gap is as it is here, withholding authority from the employee even when it's needed to accomplish a task. So if you tell your employee, you know, I need you to get our collections up, okay, but you don't have the authority to make any decisions about that, and you don't have the authority to even access our credit card payment process in order to take the payments, you know, you can see how that would be an unreasonable amount of authority that you're withholding, right? They need this to get the job done. If you are asking a small team of people to do a project and you want Susan to be in charge of it, but Susan doesn't have any authority to, you know, coach or work with the rest of the team and have them do things, that's unreasonable from Susan's point of view, right? You will not have success. So it's very frustrating, very demotivating. And, you know, so don't do that, but what do you do? Well, you want to match the needs of your business with your employees' skills. So this is an important thing to consider in hiring, and it's why that job description is so important, that you really need to know who it is you're hiring, or what it is you're hiring for before you can decide who is a good fit. One of our clients, when looking to hire her first employee, wanted the person to be able to do both inside sales and kind of admin type of work, and also do a lot of client management work in an event type of business, and a lot more sort of outside sales as well. And that's not always, you know, when you're thinking that through, you might think, it's going to be hard to find a person who's both really good at detailed administrative stuff and making sure that all of the, you know, various things are ordered for these events, right? So we're very high profile types of events with thousands of details. You know, you've got to order the flowers and make sure the caterers are set and this and that. But then, so somebody who's really good at that, but who then is also really good at being comfortable going out and talking to people and cold calling and trying to get sales. So, you know, you have to be realistic, I think, about what kinds of tasks you can combine. Because often people who are very detail-oriented, obviously, are not always very good at being comfortable, you know, selling, for instance. So that's something that you want to think through. And when you're hiring people, make sure that your business needs are matching with their skills. So here's a few more pitfalls to avoid. Oh dear, you can delegate authority but not responsibility. In the end, it's all on you, isn't it? And that's the thing that's so frustrating. So I can tell my employee who's making business calls or collection calls that she has the authority to you know, negotiate payment terms with the clients. But in the end, if it doesn't happen, it's still my business. The buck stops with me. And that's just the way it goes. There's just really no way around that. Another thing to avoid is grabbing it back, right? So I tell my employee that she can, that I need her to make these collection calls, and that she has the authority to negotiate payment terms within a range that we both agree to. And then what I start doing is looking at her list every day and seeing what's going on with it. Or even worse, I start talking with my customers independent of her to find out what's going on. Don't do that. It makes the business look bad if you're dealing with external people. But even internally, it lets her know that you think she's an idiot. I mean, just to be blunt, right? So don't do that. On the other hand, because you are responsible for it, you want to have some metrics that you identify that you can use on a regular basis. And so this kind of gets back to that reporting issue that was earlier on the job description tool, that you can say, you know, well, every Friday afternoon before you leave, send me, you know, a quick email telling me about these, you know, these 5, you know, there are big clients that haven't paid or something. And she may say, well, you know, I'm using the spreadsheet, and so how about if I just send you the spreadsheet? And you might say, okay, that might be fine. Or it might be you say, you know, the spreadsheet has 150 customers on it, and, you know, you're only calling a few of them because most of them pay as agreed, but I don't want to see a spreadsheet of 150, so send me something shorter, more of a dashboard. That would be fine too. But again, we're back to metrics. Okay, here's the one thing that is the bad news for people who are planning a business. If you're the entrepreneur, especially in a small business, your business is going to have to be pretty big before you can hire somebody else to do sales. And frankly, you're still going to be doing sales for a long time. Just because you don't want to, don't think that you're going to be able to find somebody else who will do it for you. That is something that when you're starting a business, you are the best salesperson for that business, and you're going to have to you're just going to have to get over that, right? So we actually have some sales webinars coming up in May that I'll tell you about in a few minutes. But you can have somebody help with sales, but you will be the salesperson. Okay. Then when you're done with the delegation, right? Or they maybe after the first time, if this is going to be an ongoing thing, maybe after the first Friday after the person has started making these calls, you want to debrief with them. This doesn't have to be some hour-long meeting, you know, with an agenda and you sit down and have coffee or something. You just want to make time to do that. You know, stop by their phone area and say, hey, how did that go? Quicker, as long as it's immediate, is much better than, you know, saying, well, I don't have an hour to sit down with them, so it's going to be like 3 weeks before we can get together. Don't do that. Spend 5 minutes right away. Find out what kind of questions they have, and ask them for their feedback. Are there other things that we could be doing, perhaps, you might ask them, that would be more effective? Or what did you find that worked? What do you think we should do differently? Again, that helps you grow your company beyond just your ideas, which is what you need to do in order to be able to make your company grow. So that is delegation. If you have any questions, you can shoot them to me as we go through our kind of next steps here. So what you can do is, now that you've downloaded the handouts, and hopefully everyone has, you can work through these tools just on your own. They're downloadable PDFs. You can print them if you like hard copies. You can use them, and use them just on your computer if you prefer that. And you can also make an appointment to see Meg Herman, who is our Director of Entrepreneurial Services here at the WBDC, or myself. We're the Certified Growth Wheel Advisors here, if you're in the Chicago area, which I think pretty much everybody is. And so I'd like to ask for poll number 5 now, just to find out kind of what you're thinking about for your next steps. So if folks can vote, pretend that you're in the Acela corridor, right? That's the primaries going on today. Vote early and often, as we say. But if you can let us know if you plan to work through use this either by yourself or make an appointment with us or attend a future webinar. It looks like folks are planning to do at least one, more than one, some combination of them. So that's terrific. Thank you. And now I want to have our 6th and final poll up, which are seemingly random questions, but I will tell you in a minute why we asked them. So if anyone is a military veteran, if you're interested in childcare, or if you're in the Aurora, Illinois area, if you could let me know that, please. Okay, we'll keep the poll open for another few seconds. It looks like no one is, but let me tell you why I'm asking that. In case you know folks who are in these categories, we do provide services to veterans, both men and women. I mean, all of our services are for men and women both, but we have something called the Veteran Business Outreach Center, and there's some special programs that are going to be coming up for military veterans. We have a deep knowledge base in the childcare industry, and in fact have a large expo coming up in June for childcare businesses in the Chicagoland area. And we also have operations in Aurora, Illinois, for folks who are out in the far west suburbs. So anyway, if you know anyone like that, you can also send them our way. Okay, so the thing about Growth Wheel, as you'll remember from that original slide with all of the various, if you remember the big circle, with all of the different focus areas, there's a lot of different tools that we can use. If you're focused on identifying how to raise prices, for instance, or if you've got operational issues or anything like that. And we can work through those areas with you using Growth Wheel. And as I mentioned, you can also go to our website for archived webinars. And if you go to the wbdc.org website, in the Events tab, you can see a little section called Online Business Resources. Click there, and then you'll see an option to go to Archived Webinars. And that's where all the Growth Wheel webinars, including this one, are archived. When you go to them, as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, you will not be able to download the tools. But if you want to, you can just reach out to me. If you're already a client, certainly, and we can get you the tools. We just can't have them on the website for anyone to grab because of our license agreement with Growth Wheel. There's 3 upcoming webinars which you can access through our events calendar that I really want to make sure you're aware of. We have one on May 11th on planning sales. So we're having a 3-part series on sales. And the first one is how to plan sales. That'll be May 11th. The second is overcoming objections from customers. That'll be May 17th. And then the third is how to look at selling as a service on May 25th. Many people don't especially starting out, feel uncomfortable with sales for a variety of reasons. And we hope that these three webinars will help people get a little bit of a comfort level with how to sell confidently and ethically. And just in general, May is going to be a super busy month for us. Crane's Small Business Week is the first week in May in the Chicagoland area, which corresponds with the Small Business Administration's National Small Business Week. And there are just a ton of programs going on. We normally do a printed full-page calendar for every month, and so we do a front and back for 2 months normally. For May, we have it all being, we have 2 pages essentially on one piece of paper, and just for May, and it had to be crammed in to fit that. So I really encourage you to go to our website, look at the stuff coming up in May, and then also go to the Crane's website, which is chicagobusiness.com/SBW. So chicagobusiness.com, which is Crane's website, and then /SBW for Small Business Week. We're doing some stuff, but there's lots of other organizations doing terrific workshops as well. So I don't see any further questions that we haven't covered, and I will go ahead and stay on the webinar for another couple minutes. If people have questions, you can shoot them on here. And to make sure, once again, that you've downloaded the handouts. If you have any problems with downloading the handouts, please post a question and we'll make sure that we get them to you. Oh, I didn't do the how do I set up an appointment. Sorry. So it's important to remember that one-on-one counseling is always available at no charge. We can do it in person, by phone, by Skype. If you haven't already completed an intake form, we need to collect that information. It takes, and so then the appointment is usually, 45 minutes to an hour. So you can just call our front desk. Here's the phone number. And you can either meet with myself or with Meg Herman, and we can get an appointment set up for you at your convenience. Okay, there's the end of the webinar. And again, I'll stay on for another minute or two to make sure people have a chance to download the handouts. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope that everybody has a productive afternoon.